When I first started meditating a long time ago, and reading the philosophers in our lineage, and going into meditation, meant leaving the world behind and going off into my own inner emptiness. At first, I had difficulty finding equilibrium in meditation. I worried about toppling over or some such thing. But now I see there's not much to be learned from meditation itself. It's the speculation we do about the meaning of relativity. That we spend far too much time on, rather than just chanting or sitting in emptiness. I've spent tens of thousands of hours meditating, sometimes chanting. And it seems exactly the right thing to do, because I get into myself in the unique way, which is to have one thought. While practicing meditation. And most of that thinking involved my experiences in meditation. You know, when I first got into spirituality, I was seeking what is to be learned by meditation, by chanting, by sitting, by listening to my teachers' talks, going to lunch with them. And eventually, I stopped asking questions about what's this all about, because I just found meditation so wonderful. If you're new at meditation, that means the first 5 years you start practicing. Meditation always feels a bit awkward to the setup, arranging the room, arranging the sounds, turning on spiritual music, whatever becomes a ritual. And on an observational basis, when I'm sitting in meditation, I know nothing. I don't have a clue. And I remember when I first started meditating, I felt I was getting stupider and stupider and stupider. Or more stupid, more stupid. It's because I left the world of ideas and communication to just silent being with myself. Ending the thought stream. Or if not ending it, at least diminishing it. And boy, did ending that thinking was kind of hard to do. That's why we had people with sticks come around. Unless your sitting was perfect and your breathing was perfect, they hit you over the shoulder with the long stick. Kyosaku. One of the benefits is you pick up a lot of the lingo around meditation. But what do I get out of meditation? Well, one thing I lose I'm no longer the stupidest person in the room. We're all equally stupid, with no thinking, no thought. And how much happiness it can bring you to be without thought. And instead be with yourself prior to thinking. And you get to realize there's more in this world than our hobbies, our relationships, our possessions. And the more that's there is nothingness, the absence of being. And with meditation, you get to experience that to an extent. At first, they tell you when you're practicing meditation, to do something like ask yourself, who am I, over and over again. That's stupid, utterly stupid. Who am I? Who am I? Dumb. It's just that it's a kind of waking sleep, and the same kind of rest that you get from sleeping, you get from meditation, are very similar. But is there anything gained from meditation? Well, yes. You never have to worry about time anymore. Time that a TV show is on, time you have to be at work, the time for lunch, time for this, time for that. Everything's timed out. Every day is similar to every other day except for Sunday. Sunday you have no schedule, or relatively little. But it's really fun to be fucking stupid and not know anything and just be. The emphasis changes from knowing all kinds of concepts and who and what and why and physics and medicine to knowing nothing in a very direct way. You're turning off your mind, the cogitation part, the thinking part, and just perceiving and then resting in yourself, the primary existence before thinking. And you find in that emptiness a peace that you never felt before except when sleeping. And when you're sleeping, you're not actually aware of the peace so much as you become the peace. With meditation, though, you pass from thinking mind to zero mind or peaceful mind many, many times, and you can watch the transition. And then you can become addicted to meditation. And about that time, you increasingly lose interest in what's going on in the world. Because what you find interesting now is what's going on inside of yourself, which you couldn't really find out prior to starting meditation. Meditation frees you from being possessed by thoughts. And then they become a mere collection of experiences during the day, thinking. And you realize all of these things that you think were important, you spend all days thinking about, really aren't necessary at all. It's not necessary to listen to the junk we listen to with our minds. And the big questions in life are more or less, who or what am I? And after a while, though, you realize even that question disappears. The more we do meditation, thinking about it disappears. And sometimes you can hardly wait to get into meditation, because when you start sitting in meditation, after a while, whenever you sit in a certain way, instantaneously almost, you go into meditation. And when that happened, or as a consequence, I more or less fell into nothingness. What happened in the external world didn't bother me. And after a while, it didn't even seem interesting to me. All that there was this state of nothingness, emptiness, no thinking, and being alive, every moment, brilliantly alive. And the mind was stopped and completely focused on one's own self, which is experienced in deep meditation as nothingness, darkness, lightness, whatever. There's nothing cognitive in meditation. You don't learn a mantra. There's really nothing to learn from it, except that stopping thinking is very pleasurable. But there's no big shazam that comes out of it. No big world-transforming experiences when you're meditating. Well, there are quite a few when you first start meditating, because it's new and lots of new stuff comes up. But after a few years, nothing comes up, really. And anything that comes up, you regard as trivial. And in a sense, even life and death become trivial, because you watch it happen around you all the time, on television, the movies, on the news. The news can be stressful because you don't get 30 minutes of peacefulness. You get 30 minutes of information about how the world is falling apart. We have a new kitten that's calling from the back room, and it's distracting me. Little white thing, maybe weighs 2 pounds now. Very, very sweet. Very sweet. Very gentle kitty. Playful. And that's the level my mind functions at now. good, bad, restful, restless. There's nothing that's important anymore. Even my daily experiences fall into the background of relevance. And I get to watch myself so much more closely. Than I did before I started meditating. There are hindrances to meditation too. But sometimes those hindrances are just hindrances to meditation and a way to not experience an empty mind or purposelessness. If there's something always to be attended to, some chore, or such a thing we always do at a certain time, every day, or 1 or 2 days of the week. But with meditation, you become, what do you call it? Aware of nothingness progressively, and then becoming happier and happier the more we feel that nothingness is us. We're no longer something that has to be doing something else. We're nothing. You can eat 1 meal a day or 5. You can sleep 4 hours or 14. These are just daily occurrences. They come and they go. But when you sit in meditation, you enter a state of relaxed peace. And then you can really begin to explore your experience of yourself. With eyes closed or partially open, sitting in front of a wall, or sitting in a chair like this. You just try to be aware of everything. That trying is really during the first 5 years, when you wonder if you're doing meditation right or wrong, and you question everything you do. But when you're not in an ashram or in a Zen setting, you don't have to be too hard on yourself to have a perfect sitting. And the relaxed sittings are just that, relaxed sittings. They're not really transformative, except as they accumulate. But behind that, or before that, is the experience of emptiness when your mind stops. And you suddenly discover you become one with the entire universe. You're sitting, you're sitting. And you can lose consciousness too. Your consciousness becomes so rarefied that it becomes a lot like sleeping, but being totally aware of your body and your mind. And the differences between you in meditation and you in everyday life, between periods of meditation, becomes smaller and smaller. You become a much more peaceful person. Our big white cat is just out here now. The little cat is white also, just like the big one. He's constantly, the little one, picking on the big one, because finally he's got somebody he can play with his kind of play. And he does nothing else but do that with the big cat. Big cat naturally finds this not amusing at all. But it gives you something to think about. What goes on in their minds when they play, or what goes on in their minds when they sleep in your lap. You know they're happy. You know they're happy with you. And that makes me happy. Them finding my presence comforting and bringing them happiness and sleep. I know. If you go spending a time in an ashram with fixed schedule, meditations, talks, you more or less check out of the old world you've been living in. You're going into a new world, which is your own inner space. And how being in that empty space transforms your life. You become more relaxed, more silent. And less result-oriented. Being becomes more important than becoming or acquiring. And beingness is what you learn in meditation. The process of being in the experience of a first person. This is the important thing of meditation. Relaxing yourself as an entity in everyday life, or even in a strenuous situation. Behind you, there's a ground of support that's always there, that in a way holds you in its hands and gives you comfort and acceptance constantly, which is your own mind. softening up, becoming less rigid and less demanding of you as to what you should accomplish or do. You become a jolly good fellow. Or at least your version of it. Your version of being peaceful and quiet. And finding that not bad, not something to be run away from, but something to be embraced. The emptiness should be embraced. The nothingness should be embraced. The doing nothing should be embraced. As the opposite of the Western lifespan. Always doing something, growing up, educating, working. You learn to find out that doing nothing is a new kind of happiness. And it's a very deep happiness that you feel. There's nothing there that can bother you right now. You're in meditation. If there's a noise or the sound of a car revving its engines, a motorcycle, etc., these all come and go, and you register their existence like you do the things that don't hardly cause you to attend to them at all. And that's a sort of a secondary consequence of sitting in meditation. After a while, everything is okay as it is. There's no need to change it anymore. No need to try to get to be more spiritual. No need to follow all the rules of an ashram or rules you've learned for a happy life. And you begin living a life without rules. You see other people live those rules, their own rules. So you have to really be careful about that. You don't impress upon them to tell people their rules are foolish or unnecessary. But the thing is, doing nothing and becoming nothing are both the same. Rather than being everything, the reality to you is that everything is oneness. There's nothing that stands out as important or less important. No matter what happens, you're not moved by it. It's just another experience, coming and then going. And you become like a rock in the middle of a flowing creek where there's bubbling noises around you all the time, as well as the sound of the water hitting rocks. But the thing that I think we find most impactful of meditation is finding the silence and to stop running from it like most people do in their everyday life. They fill up their life with thinking and doings. But when you find out you don't have to do that anymore, wow, your whole being relaxes. The tensions in your body begin to go. Tensions I had felt all of my life disappeared. I guess if I were to characterize the teachings, silently be with yourself. I know at first it's contradictory because we're just learning about the effects of meditation. So there's a lot to learn, and it can really focus the mind on questions. But after 5 years or so, you've learned how to relax and do nothing. You can even compete with your cat as who does the lesser amount. And the less there was for me, the happier I became, because I was no longer attending to all the trivial details of my life, as well as what was going on in the world. I couldn't give a shit less. My happiness was in being itself, not in what the being is doing, but being. And dwelling in that beingness. Being is both infinitely large and the background of emptiness is silence and awareness. Then you can begin to understand all the papers being written currently in psychology, trying to point out all the different aspects of being. But you'll have learned it firsthand, rather than in a haphazard experiential way. When you sit for a couple of hours every day for 30 years or so, you're a very different person than you were 30 years before. Oh, one of the few things I can say with all assurance about this is that you're happy, content, non-striving. You can be worried about something, sure, but it's not an obsessive kind of thing that grabs you. It grabs your mind and forces you to think about something or remember something. Your whole mind is much gentler and slower to react. So you have time to feel within. Feel one's body, your body, from within. The mind naturally drops out of the brain center into the gut or the chest area. And when you're sitting in meditation, if you try to find out where you are located as life goes to here, the gut, which is so different from most Westerners today, where most of their attention is here, to the most trivial thoughts becoming meaningful when they're repeated enough inside of you. What if that repetition, that repeating itself stopped? Wouldn't you feel peaceful? Of course you would. So it's not wrong to call Zen a religion of peace. But it's a kind of peace that few people ever experience, except in sleep. But you can do it consciously every day for a few hours. Turn off your mind and just go into an observing mode. And gradually lose your individuality with the grandiosity of the totality of everything around you. You become as much aware of that outside as your own insides, but directly aware, not thinking aware. But the overwhelming experience is of complete rest, relaxation. And the chattering mind still does it to an extent, but you don't pay it any attention anymore because you're separate from it. It used to be that you were the chattering mind, but you don't identify with just the mind anymore. You identify more with the body's experiences. There is a silence in you. When you find that silence over the years of sitting meditation, you find a kind of happiness that is so overwhelming. That it's even hard to talk about because you get lost in the bliss of happiness. But pure existence experience directly, without the mind doing anything or focusing on anything, is one of just being fucking happy. And you don't know why, except that you're not involved in the thinking world, the world of newspapers, the world of books, the world of talking, conversation. And you can easily do nothing for 2 or 3 hours and not feel you've wasted your time. Well, I don't know how many of you feel this happiness. But it's not important to know who feels it or not. If you practice meditation, after a while you will know exactly what I'm talking about. But we seem to be, as a people, very, very aware and fixated upon things we have to do or have to experience, whether it's paying taxes or eating lunch, paying a bill. All this complexity is going on all the time. And it kind of puts us on edge, because there are so many things to do and so little time to do it in. But that kind of tension, we gotta do this, disappears with meditation. Old habits fall away from disuse. And you always feel yourself is empty, as well as the world around you. It's robbed of the kind of tension we have when we're alive and paying attention to this feeling. But when that feeling goes of being on alert, ready for action, or doing the action, we're left with a mind and with an experiential body that's much bigger than it is in everyday normal life for a normal person. You will have learned how to eat time. You eat it instead of it eating you. I remember days passing. It would be filled with my doings between going to a class, going to work in an office, going to work in my own house. All of these things consumed so much attention because the mind was constantly focused on a problem here, never ending except when you sleep. What if the mind stopped going like that and instead turned around and entered you and observed you from inside? And then you feel it as if there's a separate life force inside of you, coexisting with your skin as a boundary. Rather than any other answer, if somebody asked me what Zen was about, I'd say it's about learning how to relax totally. And a lot of that involves spending a great deal of attention on yourself for a long period of time. So that the attention itself and what arises from that attention is now you. And you can abide in yourself the greatest happiness you can imagine by just sitting in silence. And the rest of your day too is different. It's no longer trying to fit a 45-hour day into 24 hours. It's no longer crowded. You take your time. You feel your gut. You watch your mind for a minute or two to see what it's doing. If it's the same old, you just let it pass. Because always now, as a meditator, a long time meditator, all you experience really is happiness when you sit in meditation. You can feel your breath, yeah. You can even feel the focus of your attention being in the torso area. And you can change that. You can move the center of your attention to your hand, feeling the hand from the inside. Or bring it back to the heart, or down lower, where it gets rest from the hurry of everyday life. I don't think anybody else in the world would define Zen as peacefulness. Yeah, you should ask teachers, Zen teachers, what they think Zen is. Anyway, it's a good kind of question and answer that makes for a good koan. It brings up another topic, though. Koans. Are they necessary? I would say that they're necessary for anything, but when you could attend to the things that go on in yourself with equanimity, and happiness, your life as a whole is transformed into happiness. And who would think you could have gained happiness just by being absorbed in yourself? It doesn't take a great love affair. It doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take an important job being president or king. It's something within the grasp of any person who will allow themselves to sit, turn their attention around into themselves. It feels like you're turning it around towards the inside of your body. And you feel that. You begin to feel internally any kind of movement or presence or activity, or if there are any centers of sensation of any sort. And there are, but they change. And you will notice that if this is you, when you begin, after a year, you're like this, 2 years like this, and 5 years you're like this. It's a slow process, but it's also very entertaining. You're learning to explore awareness itself, not some objects in the world, or even yourself as an object. You learn how to be yourself, nothing more. Just to be the way you are. And that will change over time because you'll become a more relaxed human being. The more years you have practiced. But the end to learning never stops. Each meditation session leaves a mark on you, which adds to your happiness. Okay. Question and answer time. Does anybody have any questions?
Hi, G, it's Michael.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, thanks for the teachings. I don't know anybody else on the planet that does anything like this. I'm sure maybe somewhere in Tibet, maybe or something, but um, I noticed that nowadays, or in the past, the man in history, we had famines and things from the outside ruining us as humans. Now I think it's even worse with the AI and the electronics. It seems like they're going after people inside out, which is on a form of magnitude a lot worse than how people used to ruin themselves in the past. But I'm I want I'm sort of getting learning this sort of ass backwards in the meditation, meaning uh, I, when I look at I've had more success, or I can't say I had more success, but by just all this kind of happened good for me when I outside of meditation and maybe sitting meditation, that is, and maybe sitting meditation was the tool for this to happen for me. But one day I realized I was not in a sitting meditation. I was just waking up, or I'd be driving, and I feel like a tide of stillness coming from to me from the outside in, like hovering around my aura or that energy around me, and it sort of permeated me into me, and I understood stillness better, sort of from the outside in. It was sort of like this peaceful energy that rained down on me, and I could sit in it or in a lazy boy chair or drive in it, and it sort of permeated. And I what I had trouble with in the past was anytime I exerted effort, like sitting meditation, posture, mind, I put it all together and it all amounted as effort. And anytime I found out that whether it's letting go of a thought, breaking bad habits, sitting in a posture, when I put all the fundamentals together, the bottom line for me was that effort was being put into the situation in it. And what I experienced was when I was just at peace and I was just relaxed outside of sitting meditation, it all happened for me by just a soft relaxation, sort of that I equate walking on rice paper. The energy is so subtle, so soft, and you become part of it. It's almost like a tide coming in, and like a tide that's coming in back and forth. However, I've also found that if I don't give myself into it totally and let myself go into it, I drop the golden string per se. And the golden string is that peace and divinity feeling. And what I feel sad about the whole human race and everything is that it seems like the reality is there that if you do not put this into your life as number one or become the most of you, you'll keep dropping that string and you'll never be enlightened. It's like if you're into work where it's so competitive out in the world these days, or if you're a sportsman, your heart is into that. I mean, there's no way that divine energy doesn't know that. You could fool yourself and say, "Yeah, I'm being spiritual and I'm practicing 2 hours of meditation every day." But if you don't, if your heart literally isn't putting that before everything, you can't ever experience the total experience, I believe. Or is there a way that you can, like in a pie chart, divide everything and still have that aspect of spirituality, or do you have to completely make it your beingness?
What do you think the answer is?
I think it's what I just said. I think you almost have to completely let go of everything that you thought that you liked, your hobbies. If you put your hobbies first before that and put that in the background, it's not going to happen. It just won't. It's almost like you've got to give it all up in your heart. And if you do it, it's almost like you have to do it with sort of like background noise. Like, okay, I'm doing it, but I'm only going to put 30% of attention to it, or I'll drop the golden string.
You know, this is interesting because when I talk to Zen practitioners and monks back in the old days and ask them what their experience is, they more or less seemed, after I asked that question, a bit stunned by it. But part of the process is learning how to let go of everything and just be. And sometimes that's all you have to do is be. That's called meditation. And sometimes you have to do things, but with a meditation mind. It's there also. Somewhere inside of you and inside of everybody is awareness. You're aware of the need to pee or poo, of feeling a comb on your arm, the temperature of the room, what else is being heard in the room, if anything. And if you have a silent room, you could go for half an hour without hearing anything. And it's in this kind of emptiness that you more and more find your own happiness, because you're not separated from yourself anymore. And then you find out that the self you've been running from your whole life is actually the place to be, resting in peace inside of yourself, aware of yourself and aware of the others, and aware of your effect on the other. But you've learned to let go completely and just let yourself be and let the world be. And you're that stillness that this is all happening in. And you realize that stillness when you sit and do the meditation. You can enter the still world. I can do it like it's almost instantaneous. And even if I were walking, if I chose to feel like I'm entering meditation, I do. And that's my response to whatever you said.
Okay.
I really don't know how to answer questions because I see them, all the questions, as busy makers so they can stay out of your mind or stay in the mind. I think a lot of us don't feel we're being alive unless we're in the mind telling us we're alive. by giving us experiences. But the happiest thing is when that inner you begins to surrender to the bigger you around it. And the difference between inside and outside disappears. You enter a different way of living when you live in your body instead of living in your mind up here, judging, thinking, calculating. Here you just feel it with your whole body. So you've gained the wholeness and lost the obsessiveness of attending to details. Anybody else? Eric, do you have a
Oh,
question?
Edgy, I'm going to follow up. If we find ourselves dropping that golden string in the middle of the day, is it best to do self-inquiry, like say to yourself, why am I losing this, what I had, this tide, that a piece that came up on me? Who's that lost this, or do something to try to get it back? Because I find that if you try, it's bad. And it's almost like you just either go fishing or do something that
That's
quiet or something that where,
the way it is in the beginning. The first 5 years or so of a meditator's life is like that. But after a while, the slowness, the peacefulness, and the attentiveness all come together very nicely, leaving you feeling full of life and still doing things on your own in private. It's different. Like the way you're talking, it doesn't compute at all for me anymore, because I'm more or less constantly in that state of relaxed happiness. And what takes me out of it is trying to do some sort of thing for work or for somebody else. When we get involved with another person, become aware of ourselves in relationship to that person. But the thing to be learned is whatever happens, it's only going to be momentarily. And what you do with meditation is you expand that moment of peace until it's all pervasive in you and around you, and you begin to broadcast it to other people just by your being peaceful. You find people coming up to you and wanting to sit close to you, or something like that, or they listen more to what you're saying. And you talk about the utter relaxation of beingness instead of doingness. For a long while, learning how to be is kind of doing, because you have to do and undo what you did before, however you acquired. It becomes too complicated for me to even follow what I'm saying. I fumble around and get lost. You just say, oh fuck, and go back to meditating. Just meditate. Be still. And in that stillness, you'll find everything. You'll find your happiness, you'll find your sadness, you'll find your hurt, you'll find pleasure. It's all there. And when it gets to be where they're all sort of the same to you, the same experiences, you know that you've bottomed out. And inner and outer experiences are about the same, and everything is about the same. And you're not upset that much anymore. And you just sort of live in that groove of happiness. Just by repeated happiness meditation. Do it for 10,000 times and it becomes a lifestyle. Any other questions? Chris, could you put some solid spiritual music on? Good old ones that everybody knows, really loves.
Yes. One moment.
I've been thinking of adding another day of experience of meditation. Another day like this kind, or another day of just sitting meditation. I don't know which. But I just want you to know and to think about what you would like to do. Don't tell me now that it would take the peace out of what I feel. But what would you want to do if we had another day? Now, today, I was totally all over the board with what I was talking about. Sort of scattered. And it seemed bright to me, mainly because I couldn't do anything else. So it had to be right. So think about it. We ought to too be thinking about no, I won't throw that out there this time. But just try to remember that everything you're looking for is already there within you, but not in a way that you've imagined. If you do something repetitively because it's pleasurable, eventually it'll become everything. And when meditation, well practiced, each time brings a sense of peace, your whole being exudes peacefulness that others can feel and experience. I love you all. Please come back next Sunday and we can talk at that time or during the week about adding another day and what that class would look like. Take care. I love you all. Take care. Go chant now.